So Gen Z, I'm definitely part of this upcoming generation, and I assume most of my audience falls into either this category or at least millennials and maybe like a couple of Gen Xers sprawled in there. And although people meme about Zoomers and shit, no matter what, time doesn't stop. And over the next couple decades, Gen Z is going to be the generation that is in charge of, well, running the world. And depending on how Gen Z handles things, their ideas could stay in power for long periods of time, just like how we see baby boomers and stuff in power still to this day. And not only speaking about power, but corporations and stuff will definitely have to bend to the will of Gen Z and future generations, because to appeal to these generations gives them maximum revenue. And if they're in for the long haul, eventually their corporation will be entirely composed of Gen Zers or even younger generations. And this isn't even speaking politically, because obviously politics will always be divided. There's always going to be a political divide between every generation. This is just speaking on like the way that the world is shifting and how technology is being introduced into the world and how technology is even shifting from when it was originally created in the world. The internet changes very, very fast. And the internet of 2020 is not even the same internet as, say, 2015. It is constantly changing and evolving to be faster paced or just different in general. In 2015, for example, we didn't even have something like TikTok, and now TikTok completely dominates the mobile market, with Charlie D'Amelio, the biggest TikTok creator, just surpassing 100 million followers recently. It is a huge market that just instantly blew up and just got thrown into the lives of hundreds of millions of Gen Zers and other generations just instantly. And a lot of corporations and businesses are looking at the ever changing internet and Gen Z and trying to determine how they can properly grasp hold of these people's interests in such a competitive environment. And one such entity that is attempting to appeal to the younger, faster generation and world is that of the sports industry. And sports have been around for forever, since basically we were able to record human history. Since 3000 BC, they were finding, cave drawings of people wrestling. So it's been a part of our history for millennia. And throughout history, typically a vast majority of people consider themselves sports fans. Usually people wouldn't say like, "Oh, I don't like sports." Maybe they don't keep up with it, but sports have been interesting to the human brain for as long as they can remember. For according to this Washington Post article, even today, 96% of 12 to 17-year-olds still call themselves sports fans. With a number as huge as 96%, surely you'd have to think like, where is the problem? Nearly every single 12 to 17-year-old is still interested in sports, so why is there even an issue? The problem comes in that the fans who describe themselves as avid, like constant watchers of sports, people who keep up with sports, has dropped almost 10% in just the past decade. It has been the biggest drop that has ever been seen in human history. And obviously the sports industries have to look and find out, why is this drop happening so fast and so hard? And so this guy, Mark Beal, he's like a communication and information guy, like a sports guy or whatever, basically looked into this and surveyed Gen Z and finds that sports like typically rank behind almost every other form of entertainment when it comes to Gen Zers. They'll fall behind music, movies, TV, even like celebrity news and stuff like that. Sports typically rank on lower on the scale for Gen Zers. And also typically when someone will play sports, they're more likely to develop, like a fan type of loyalty. They're more likely to be interested in, watching sports, being avid about sports. But even in just the past year, and a year is realistically a long time. Like a generation only lasts typically 10 to maybe 15 years. So in the past year, sports interactivity has been greatly decreased just because of COVID. Just purely based off of COVID, it's a lot more difficult to get involved with sports. And so basically like 10% of the entire generation has just been cut off and cut out of the ability to participate in sports because of these lockdowns. And so basically, long story short, Gen Z is getting pounded when it comes to sports. They're not able to play them as much. They aren't viewing them as much. They're not super interested in them in them the same way that they used to be. So what is like trying to be done to increase, this generation's like interest in the sports? Because honestly, if this generation isn't interested in it, it's completely plausible that there wouldn't be mainstream sports in 30, 40 years, because they don't quite hook that necessary generation, this necessary upcoming generation. If they can't hook that, they'd easily die out. And then what would happen then? We wouldn't have NBA. Like, what would the world even look like? And obviously, people make the argument, oh, esports is up and coming. And I mean, esports has been doing okay. Like a lot of places have invested in esports, like NBA 2K invested in like Team Liquid and Epic Games and stuff for Fortnite. But esports isn't really, that's not really how these companies are trying to grasp the attention of Gen Zers, because esports is honestly, it's a pretty niche market. A lot of people enjoy playing games, but competitive games in esports is not as big as possible. And so one sect of sports particularly has been doing pretty well. The NBA, for example, they have actually almost half of the people who watch the NBA are under 35, so they kind of fit into that niche of millennial or Gen Z. The way they're doing that is, young fans, like younger people, they don't really have the time or the energy or the care as much as older people to sit through like an hour and a half, 2.5 hour long game and watch the entire thing the whole way through. And so they're taking, clips, highlights, just one little, like even just like 10, 15-second moments, and posting it around just to get to fit that little niche of the, the spurred out, hyped up Zoomers who are just always, looking around, bouncing from one thing to the next. And it's honestly really smart. It works really well. Basketball is a game specifically that you can kind of fit that niche and pump out a lot of just like 15-second clips that can get younger people hooked onto watching the sport, and then maybe, they'll potentially watch a game eventually. But it's not going to just jump into a 2.5 hour long game just off the bat. And it's also, it's just genuinely evident that it's just not as popular as it used to be. Like, for example, last month, the NBA Finals had the worst TV viewership it's seen in years. It had disastrous viewership. And they're super, super down compared to how it's ever been before. And that's even during a pandemic. People aren't busy doing things. They're all sitting at home, and still the TV viewership tanked. And even though NBA has been doing pretty well, just take a look at this graph and see just how terrible sports viewership has been. It's just been completely chunked. The Stanley Cup final down 61%, tennis 45%, Kentucky Derby 43%. The viewership on the television to watch games is just getting absolutely shit on. So we really have to look, like, does this mean that sports just will die out? Will they not be a thing in the future? Because you need that viewership to fund it. And I gotta be honest, realistically, I'm not a super big sports fan. I don't really watch sports on TV. I kept up with soccer for a little while when I kind of played it back in high school. But, to me, honestly, I wouldn't really care either way if it was here, if it was gone. But there are a lot of people who are big fans of sports, and a lot of people who play sports and do it for a living. And if this viewership continues, it's completely reasonable to assume that sports might not be a thing in 10 to 15 years. Large televised sports, people still play, but huge televised sports events might not even exist in that time. And so the NBA has been able to pull some okay numbers. At least they had 13.2 billion views across all their social media platforms just over this past year, over this year of the pandemic. But just that, that's not enough. You need to make sure that you can grasp the younger generation, really get a hold of their interests. Otherwise, you're going to keep seeing these trends we see, and it's just going to keep going down. And unless there's some way that you can just hook, young people, I don't know what they can do to turn this around, especially so heavily. It's not just a little bit. It's 30, 40, 50% for some sport. And now they're trying to say that people want to see the sports players more humanized. They're saying, like, humans are greater than highlights. That's a quote from this guy Browning, who's been working with, projects to focus on Gen Z. They want to see their players, in their real lives, see them with their wives, know what they eat and drink. But I don't know. I don't really think that that's it. You can't really make the argument that Gen Zers are so fast-paced and so, this, and then also make the argument that they want to see, like, sit down and watch the person's life. I think Gen Z likes highlights. They want to watch highlights. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, because honestly, I mean, we're part of this generation. I mean, we would know what appeals to us, and I mean, I think that they definitely need to make a lot of changes, because we can just see viewership tanking. We can just see it's not really going in the best direction for sports. But what do you guys think that they can do to improve? What do you guys think of the steps that they're taking? You know, focusing on TikTok, Instagram, stuff like that, getting views online versus the television. I don't know. Just let me know what you guys think. And if you're new around here, you know, don't be afraid to subscribe. It's totally free. You can always unsubscribe later. It's no problem. And like the video. Give me some support. But big shout out to all you guys. Thank you for watching. Peace.